Welcome to another Welcome to the SEC episode. This time we're in Fayetteville, Arkansas. Tough weather day here.
Yeah, this is perfect, man. This is a great recruiting pitch for why you'd want to come here in Northwest Arkansas.
No doubt. Coach Ryan Silverfield, brand new to the job. He's been kind enough to invite us into his home. We're going to talk about Razorback football, his background, and his family.
I want to meet these twin daughters.
Well. Okay, you babysitting?
I might.
Yeah. I don't
15
think
months might be a little too young for me.
Let's go in. You're really not going to babysit?
It's been a minute since I've had kids in diapers, man.
I mean, you got to offer.
What's up, guys?
Hey, man.
Welcome to Fayetteville. Hey, we got some home construction going on, and it's almost nap time for the girls. So how about this? I'll meet you all around back. Sound good?
Is that a pacifier?
Yeah, not mine, the girls.
Okay, we'll see you in a minute.
Yeah, right. Glad you all here.
Ryan Silverfield, the head coach at Memphis, set to be the next head coach for the Arkansas Razorbacks.
Now, CD, you and I have done a lot of interviews with coaches throughout the SEC. This is the first time we've had 1.5-year-old twins here with Coach Ryan Silverfield. This is a challenge, my friend. How are you doing?
Yeah, this is, people always talk about the day-to-day job. This is one of the greatest ones. They keep me busy. There's no downtime in college football, as you guys know, and if I do, it's with these two beauties.
They change so quickly at this age. You get the job here, they're about 9 months of age at that point. Why was it so important for you to have Katie and the girls come as quickly as they did? Because a lot of times the coaches go first and kind of get settled in.
Yeah, there's usually that transition period, right? They knew I was going to be working long nights at the office, especially with signing classes and transfer portal, getting a staff together. But listen, this is everything. So even if it's just a few minutes, quick kiss, good morning or good night, it means everything to me. And to get them here in this beautiful area of Northwest Arkansas, it's been absolutely wonderful.
Who sleeps around here? I mean, you're starting to build this new program right now. You and Katie move into a wonderful spot, and you got these two unbelievably beautiful kids hanging around.
Yeah, not a lot of whole sleep going on in the Silverfield household. I think that the girls get the most sleep, the twins, and then my wife's done a wonderful job of managing the house and then making sure that I'm handling what I need to at the office. But it's been great. It's a blessing. But yeah, not a lot of sleep going on around here.
Bigger learning curve right now. Transfer portal, NIL world, or diaper changing and bottle feedings and stuff like that?
Yeah, so I was new to all of it, right? Obviously, just like everybody else has, this NIL and the transfer portal started coming, a few years ago. Learning to adapt on the fly, no different than having identical twin girls and changing diapers for the first time. But they both have their challenges, but I look at them as opportunities.
You mentioned it being a father at a little older age. Has that given you a little different perspective on it and maybe helped you enjoy it a little bit more?
Yeah, no question about it. I think more than anything, right, as a coach and doing this now year 28, you learn perspective and you learn patience, right? Obviously, the patience with an 18-year-old freshman wide receiver is a little bit different than the patience with a 15-month-old girl, but it's been fun. I think it puts everything in perspective. I actually think I'm a better coach, a better person.
I was going to ask you, do you think it changes what it means to coach or parent somebody else's kids now, knowing kind of what you have here?
Yeah, listen, I always say this forever, right? I was raising 110 other people's sons, and now I'm raising my own beautiful daughters, and it's been great. But I do think, right, like it does put things in perspective. You have the conversations. Okay, hey, how do I want these girls to be treated? And I understand that I'm also coaching other people's, and then no different than when you have the opportunities to meet with parents of recruits or even our current players. Some of them are young parents as well. Yeah. It's kind of unique. Some of our players have kids the same age, and so it kind of puts everything into a unique perspective.
How about the job that Katie has as the head coach's wife? She's got to be a mom. She also has to try to, gain some chemistry amongst the wives.
Yeah. I mean, you got to watch the edge.
Run away from the hog. Yeah. Listen, she does everything. She's the head coach of the household by far and away. She's my boss. She hasn't given me ideas on play calling, but she tells the rest of us what to do and when to do it. But she's been great. I mean, she's raised these girls, and I try to be a part of it when I can. What are you giggling at?
Happy girls.
And they get along. You can already tell they're going to have that relationship.
Is there a parallel between coaching and parenting the same way?
Absolutely. I mean, there's every day I'm learning something new on how to be a parent, right? How to raise girls. And you learn, and that's great because as you learn from that, you become better. I always say this, it's no different, right? A parent with an ego is not going to raise their kids the right way. No different than a head coach with an ego. So you kind of have to drop all that and figure out the right thing. And so as college football continues to change, right? Like if we sat here today on this beautiful day and said, hey, college football is done changing, we're wrong, right? Yeah. We're fools. And so it's no different than as I continue to go as I continue to go changing as parents and as college football continues to change, right? How do you adjust? How do you adapt? And how do you become better at it?
It is incredible to see this right now. And I'm sure you have done interviews with mouthpieces in your hand. This is the first time I've ever done an interview with a pacifier for a coach in the hand.
Yeah, first time for everything. Yeah. That's what I always said, like, I've been doing a press conference with everybody a long time ago. There's some milk spit up, back in, just go with the flow. Yeah. And if you look over on the sideline, there's a pacifier hanging out the side of my pocket. It's probably the same pants I was just wearing the day before.
It'll endear you to the fans, I promise.
We'll get a chance to go inside, chat with you a little bit more. I know it's nap time, so you got to go be a dad right there. Let's go knock it out, all right?
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
You got it. What keeps you normal?
Yeah, I think, you try in this day and age to be on a schedule, right? You try in this day and age to say, okay, this is what I'm going to do at this time. But man, it's hard. It's hard running a football program because we know, right, the NCAA may change the calendar. You can never dictate, hey, when a recruit wants to do something or there's something that needs to be handled within your organization. And then obviously when you're dealing with 15 months old, you're on their schedule. And so, what keeps you normal? You try to do what you can. Ultimately, just being grounded. And you don't have a whole lot of time for hobbies, right? Try to get a run in the morning. Try to be as present and organized as I can at the office and prepare ourselves to having a great season. And then when I'm home, try to be the best father and husband I can possibly be.
I'm curious about timing. Like, why now? You could have left Memphis. You had a lot of success there. You had other opportunities. Why was this the right time in the midst of having young twin girls and your wife being from Memphis? Like this, it just, I guess it says something special about this opportunity.
Yeah, I think that's it, right? Memphis was a special place, was there 10 years. And I think you said is there ever the right time, especially when you're fond of the place. Like, we poured our heart and soul into the place, did a lot of good things there, and so many great people in Memphis. And then I think it was this opportunity, right? Arkansas was so special, and you'd heard all the things, right? Obviously understood this region a little bit, especially, all the way through Little Rock, having recruited the area. And then when this place came calling, you sat there and said, man, I know that place is special, the rich history, the tradition, the great people. And then you think about the state of Arkansas, it's the Razorbacks. You're not in competition necessarily with other great universities. And so ultimately, I think this was the right place at the right time.
That's a good point, though. There's not a whole lot of schools in the SEC footprint that are only dominated by one school. Right. LSU in Louisiana, I guess that's why it's such a big deal to keep the talent in the state, right? I mean, you've done a great job of that already. Is that just a relationship thing or what?
I think part of it, that Chris, is one, having recruited a lot of the same guys, right? You look at a guy like Quincy Rhodes Jr., like I was his first offer out of high school, 6 years ago when he was just a junior in high school at Memphis. And then you look at even the growth and development of a guy like that who's now, an all-SEC type player, decided to return and stay part of it. And then ultimately, right, with this transfer portal, if you can recruit a high school kid from the state of Arkansas, develop him, he has the opportunity to play for you, most likely he's going to stay. He's going to be a part of it because a lot of the times the kids grew up wanting to be Razorbacks. And you can't say that for every state, and so that's pretty cool.
You kind of go through where you're at now, but I'm fascinated because I've heard this story of 100 written letters. What's that story?
Yeah, Peter, listen, I had a neck injury. I wasn't a very good player. That had certainly Florida wasn't calling me, but neat to go play there.
They weren't calling him either. He was a walk.
He did just fine, right? But I think part of it is, so I had a neck injury, and so I started coaching spring of my senior year of high school at the age of 18. And I kind of fell in love with it. At first, when an injury takes you away from a game, you just miss the sport, you miss the camaraderie, you miss the things that the day-to-day, that's all you know, right? And every 18-year-old, 17-year-old, I'm just going to go play college football, I'll play in the NFL, and I'll figure it out.
Easy.
But at the end of the day, I said, okay, I kind of fell in love with this profession. And so, really, when I was 20 years old, a small college in Virginia, Hampton-Sydney College, gave me the opportunity to start coaching a D3 school as a D-line coach there. And so, I said, this is what I want to do. And I said, okay, coaching D3 ball is great, but ultimately I'm going to need to meet more people. I'm going to need to grow. And
you didn't like the paycheck of a D3 D-line coach?
No, listen, the $500 a month is great. It was living in a different, let's say,
domicile,
scenery than this. Did not have this as my background, living in the, literally the dungeon of the gymnasium. So I wrote a letter to every Division I head coach, a handwritten letter. And I just said, listen, I graduate in 2 years. I've been coaching, here's my background, and a handwritten letter, and made it personalized to every, and that takes a long time. Yeah. And I wrote it, and I just said, I'd love to be a grad assistant or a quality control, and even wrote some of these FCS schools. Back then, they were called restricted earning coaches. And I said, I'd love to be a part of your program. and I wrote down my phone number. I didn't have a cell number. It was a hard landline. Literally, I lived in the dungeon of the basement of the gym. And, I got one written from Tyrone Willingham, the head coach at Washington at the time. He used to be the head coach at Notre Dame. And then the other was Buddy Tevens, the former head coach at Stanford, called the landline and said, listen, hey, make sure your grades are right, because to get into our master's program at Stanford, you're going to have a certain GPA, and you're going to have to take a certain test to be able to get in. And that was it. And so that always kind of crossed my mind, man, I handwritten all these letters. And so now when I go speak, whether it's, the Nike clinics or any of these other clinics that we're involved with, or I have the opportunity to meet with young coaches, I said, listen, write handwritten letters. Anybody can send a DM, anybody can send an email, anybody can send the generic typed up letter and mass produce it, but write a handwritten letter, and most likely I'm going to write you back. And if you can be consistent with it, at least it's an opportunity to develop a relationship.
In a way, you're a salesman. You're selling yourself back there as a young coach. You're selling yourself to the athletic director and the rest of the folks here in the administration. You're selling yourself to the media, to the fan base. You're selling yourself to recruits. It seems like that's a skill that you developed at a young age, and it's paying dividends already.
Well, I think, Chris, the biggest thing is just being yourself, right? And no knock on the mortgage business, but man, in a sales job, it's just, hey, this is who I am, and this is what I'm all about, and this is what I can do and bring to whatever it is, whether it's being a grad assistant at University of Central Florida under George O'Leary a long time ago, or being a young head high school coach or the head coach at the University of Arkansas. Hey, this is what we're all about. This is what we can bring. This is how we're going to get things done. And I think that's important. And as people get to know you, hopefully they say, you know what, I'll buy into that. I want to be a piece of that.
Yeah, I think sales has such a negative connotation because it's like, hey, I'm trying to convince somebody of something. But you talk about the authenticity. I'd say of the new 6 coaches in the league, I probably knew the least about you. We had you on the Sirius show back in December. I was like, oh, this guy's from Florida. Started learning a little bit more about you. But I had this idea of who you were. It's very different from the person that I'm understanding you to be. I mean, you have this personality. I watched you mic'd up during spring. You're energetic running around. I mean, it seems like that's really resonated with the players specifically.
For sure. I think, one of the things that was so unique, especially the new head coach come in, a lot of them were, hot names at SEC schools prior or been all around. And that's great. And everybody has a different path, right? Very few people have started as an 18-year-old coaching high school ball, Division III, a small college that nobody had heard of, and then just kind of, listen, I don't have a famous dad. I don't have anybody in this industry that I know that I didn't play college football, right? Or anybody that even remotely with it. And so I just kind of found ways to just, put my head down and work. And I think all of a sudden, the 7 years in the NFL, well, that seems so long ago. How long ago did Adrian Peterson play? Yeah. That was a long time. And then you just sit there and go, and you kind of, the success we had at Memphis, well, you were there so long, you kind of just get lost, and that's okay. Listen, I'm okay with people not necessarily knowing who I am now. It's my opportunity and my job is to show the people of this great state who I am and what we're all about as a program, the current players on our roster, and then ultimately recruits. And I think the fans are starting to see it. I think people at least appreciate the authenticity and kind of what we're all about and what we're going to do here.
So does that mean you're going to write handwritten letters to all the other 15 head coaches here, or you just wait and see them in the meetings and whatnot?
Yeah, listen, and there's no love lost with those guys. Some of them I know it. I don't know if it's a handwritten letter or a kick to the shins.
Well, we say that because we've been blessed enough, and what we do is to see the competitiveness on the field, but then also camaraderie off the field as well too, because especially with the shifting dynamics of the landscape of the sport right now, if you have an issue, regardless of anything in college football, which one of the SEC coaches do you lean on? Is there somebody that you have a relationship with that kind of, breaking down some ideas with?
Yeah, they're starting, obviously you start to get to know some of the new guys as a new one in this conference. You had conversations with them prior, you got to know them a little bit here or there, but then you talk about the guys even that we came with, from previous spots in the previous conference. So, John Summerall and I have had discussions, Alex Golish and I have. Obviously, everybody's ultra competitive, and so people keep things close to the vest. And so you sit there, and a lot of it is not just lean on guys from this conference, but fortunate enough, we had a lot of success with a lot of the assistant coaches at Memphis that had gone to other places. So sometimes those conversations with as many people, and I think you can learn not just from other SEC head coaches, Peter, but everybody, right? Whether it's the CEO of Tyson's Chicken, the CEO of Walmart, all they're here in our backyard. Those are great people for us to connect with.
Well, and so for the longest time, in kind of the world that we lived in, the SEC, it was like, you have to know the SEC. You need to know the pipelines and stuff like that. How much do you think of that is true in 2026?
Yeah, that was, one of the first questions I got at my press conference was, well, you've never coached the SEC. How are you going to have success here? Well, listen, I've said it all along, as I think the background and the resume speaks for itself, and that's not a pat on the back, but 28 years of doing this thing. You do it by years of coaching. I'm one of the older ones in the league now, if you look at it that way. And then ultimately, I think you don't listen. The coaching in the NFL, coaching, being around guys like Brett Favre and Jared Allen, you're around some of these great ones. Sure, maybe I didn't coach in this, but also the way recruiting is. Obviously we're going to recruit regionally, and we're going to be great in our footprint within, the 5-6 hour radius when you have to be. But now all of a sudden you see a University of Florida recruiting a kid in California. Whereas when you're growing up, why would you ever leave the state?
Yeah.
And so now it's just part of it with the transfer portal. And kids also saying, hey, you know what? I'd like to come there or see what this is all about. I've never been up there. Our kids coming from the Atlanta. So I think, a lot of it is getting overblown, but hey, it is what it is. Ultimately, the results will speak for itself.
You gave us a little bit of the unconventional path that's gotten you here. You're living in the dungeon of a D3 school. You're coaching at Memorial Day. You go 1-9 there. You're washing uniforms. You're doing everything. Like, to push through that, there's got to be not only a belief in yourself, but a love of the game. You talked a little bit about the love of coaching, but when was the game introduced to you first, and where did that love develop?
Yeah, I think, at a young age, I had a older brother that was a few years older than me that played football, and I kind of, you obviously want to emulate, your older brother and try to be like him, and he wasn't very good at football either. But, just wanted to do those things growing up, played for the legend Corky Rogers, the all-time winningest coach in the state of Florida history. And so it was really, I appreciated the idea of structure. I appreciated the idea of discipline. I appreciated the idea of trying to outwork everybody. Mm-hmm. And you talk to a lot of people about that right now, like, wait, that sounds terrible. But that stuff that drew me in, I loved it. And then the game of football still requires intelligence, still requires leadership, camaraderie, teamwork, all those things. They're so hard to find. I think you pour all that into the game of football, there's nothing better. And ultimately coaching, I still believe in this day and age, with all the things that are going on, you still have the opportunity to make a difference in young men's lives. And I think that gets lost.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Corky Rogers, because obviously he had an impact on your life and making a difference. I mean, that dude in the state of Florida, he is the gold standard for coaching, and everybody knows about the bowl school. So I think you undersell your playing career a little bit, but that career-ending injury probably at the time looks like, a devastating turn to what you thought your path was going to be. Is that the biggest, like, maybe blessing in disguise as you look back on things, or at the time we think about things, try to figure out what they mean in the moment. You can't really tell until the backside. Are there other things that would stand out that have been blessings in the rearview mirror?
Yeah, you're exactly right. I think, everybody looks at challenges and like, oh, I'm defeated. No, it's what other opportunities have come from this. And the neck injury was a perfect example. As you all know, like, hey, this is what's my next step, though, to go play college football, even if it's at a small level. Well, that's got taken away from me. So what's next? And I think it gave me the blessing in disguise of being able to coach and getting a perspective at a young age. And that was huge. And you sit there and say, now you're like, man, that's one of the best things that's ever happened. So I try to talk to our players the same way. Like, there's going to be challenges, there's going to be setbacks, there's going to be adversity that hits every day. What are you going to do with that? And I think it's an easy life lesson that we can continue to push and talk about.
All these lessons, was there ever a moment that you sat there and go, you know what? I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to get to where I want to in the coaching part, and maybe it's time to do something different. Did that ever have that moment?
For sure, Peter. I think, having tried to cut your teeth away in this profession, right? You talked about making no money coaching Division III football and trying to figure it out. And then, okay, what's next? And then you're a young head high school coach and you're terrible and the team's terrible and you're 23 years old. You're saying, man, what's next for me? And am I really cut out for this? And then you kind of...
Were you close to calling it a day?
No. I think once you decide, hey, you're going to coach and you fall in love with it. And at the time, especially, you're not having a family, I was like, listen, I'm all in on this thing. This is what I'm going to do. And I'm going to figure this thing out. And then was able to kind of move and continue to meet people and grow in this profession. And then, got a fortunate break, getting the NFL at a young age. And then I said, okay, this is it. Because forever, it was no different. Like, parents look at you like, hey, really, all right, what are you going to do for a living? Like, this $500 a month thing ain't going to cut it. Like, one day you're going to have to want to be a husband, a father, and actually support yourself even. And you can't do it at this path. And so I think just putting your head down and lean on some of the things that I've learned along the way and just keep saying good things will come. And, you look up today and say, man, still have a lot of work to do and still got a long ways to go. But I think having that chip on my shoulder and understanding, hey, how do we continue to evolve in this thing?
How about a coach? Was a coach when you started kind of doing that going, God, Don Shula or Landry or somebody like that kind of you thought growing up?
I never knew I wanted to coach, but I think having grown up and played for a legend like Coach Rogers, Corky Rogers, because that dude was everything. That coach was the end all be all. I mean, at one point he was, top 3 winningest coaches in the entire country. And the way he went about his business, I said, man, this guy's got it figured out. And he was a high school coach. He certainly didn't do it for the money. And I said, he's made such a difference and impact on so many guys. Like, I am a better man because of him. Like, I can sit here today and say that my high school coach from a long time ago in the late 90s has a direct impact, almost as much as my father on the type of man I am today. That's huge. And I think when you originally get into coaching, like, if I can have a third of the type of impact and make a difference like he did, man, I've made a better world for everybody.
We talked about your unique path, but also you come from coaching unique position group. Like you mentioned Walter Payton. I can see as a former O-line coach why you would appreciate a runner that runs that way. How did being an O-line coach form your philosophy for what you want to be offensively?
Yeah, I go back to this. So started coaching as a D3 division, D-line coach. And then I was a head coach where I was coaching everything and painting the lines and doing the laundry with the best of them. And then I was a quarterbacks coach at Jacksonville University right before your guy Kerwin Dahl was there. And then, as a GA, I was on both sides of the ball. And with the Vikings, I was a quality control working with quarterbacks. Then the next 2 years with defensive line. Then 3 years after that, offensive line. And then kind of moved to Memphis, all of a sudden got labeled as an O-line guy. And it's so unique because really I've coached every position. And so I think having that background of being around it all, especially a good amount of time at the quarterback position and the offensive line, has kind of helped us evolve what we want to do offensively. And, there's a lot of teams that run tempo. That's not necessarily us. There's some air raid. Everybody says, well, what's your system? It's something that we kind of developed over the years, come in that's got some staples from Gus Malzahn, right? It's got some staples, obviously, from Coach Petrino. It's got some staples, certainly from Mike Norvell, who when we originally got to Memphis, had this thing going, and then over time emulated some of the run game we used with the Vikings and even in Detroit. And it's kind of created who we are and what we are. And so, I think from an offensive philosophy, everybody, oh my gosh, I talk about this, we want to be really efficient. And people say, well, what does that mean? Well, we've had a pretty darn good scoring offense over the last 10 years at Memphis, and hopefully we can replicate that here. And so just being on efficient offense doesn't mean it's going to be boring. It just means you're going to find yourself ways to be productive.
You know this as well or better than I do. Like, I think fit matters, style matters. At Florida, it's not good enough to win. You got to win with offense, scoring a bunch of points. I think there's some level of appreciation here at Arkansas for playing football a certain kind of way, a style. You mentioned Coach Petrino, have you had many conversations with past coaches that have been here before to kind of pick their brain about what this job means and how you go about executing it?
Yeah, I think you get here, and I think a lot of this job emulates the rest of the state. A blue-collar state, people are going to roll their sleeves up. You got some of these great people in the state that go to work every day out in the farms and work tirelessly to provide a living for their family. Well, this job kind of, I think emulates the people. Like, let's be blue collar, let's be tough. They've obviously had a history of great offensive linemen here, right? And great running backs, certainly. I called Coach Nutt and had conversations with Houston Nutt, right? Like, because and so much credit to Sam Pittman and Brett Bielema, those that came before me. But everybody wants to talk about Coach Burrows, obviously the legend himself. And you talk about, people just say this, hey Ryan, we want to watch your team play really hard. And we want you to win a ton of games, and you will. But ultimately, we want a team that's going to play really, really hard. They're going to play the Arkansas way. And I know exactly what they mean by that. Like, hey, they want guys that are going to show up and come out swinging. We had the opportunity this past year to play Arkansas when at my previous spot at Memphis. And, I think, even the conversations whenever for the show, like, we just loved the way your guys kept fighting. And they kept fighting, and they kept fighting all the way through the fourth quarter. And so many of the fans I've come into interaction with, man, if you can get them to play like that here, just keep fighting, you're going to be endeared.
I got to ask you specifically, did you bond, was it the love of wrestling that got you and Hunter? I know Hunter loves WWE, like you're a WWE guy.
Wait a minute. Like, Hunter Yurachek loves wrestling and you love wrestling? What is this?
That's what I heard, at least, right? Is that true?
I don't know how much he does, but yeah, the late, early 90s, back in the day, even late 80s, like that was when it was classic,
Yeah.
right? I mean, prior to that, like Ultimate Warrior and Sting, when they were the Blade Runners way back in the day, like I appreciate the classics, the late 80s, early 90s stuff. Now, once it got past 95, I have no idea what's going on.
But you were locked in. I mean,
Back in the day, yeah. I mean, that's if you ever, maybe we'll cut an SEC promo where I won't come out with tights on and my face painted, but like people say, "Where's your energy come from?" Sometimes maybe it's one of those pregame speeches like, "That looks like a 1989 wrestling promo," and you got Ric Flair and Macho Man in the back.
I was flying out of Orlando. This was way back in the day. Look over, it's Macho Man Randy Savage in the airport, and he looks like he wasn't playing a part. That's really who he was in the airport of Orlando. I thought it was amazing.
So I'm trying to figure out, you're there interviewing for the head coaching position at Arkansas football, a legendary job. Hunter Yurachek is asking questions. At some point, did wrestling come up?
It may have. I think, listen, you got to get to know the person. It can't just be about scheme. It just can't always be, about family and philosophy in the process. And, hey, here's the calendar and here's how recruiting looks and here's the staff we're going to put together. But at some point, hey, it's good to know the person you are. And, whether some coaches bond over bourbon, some bond over cookies, and maybe sometimes it's over, late 80s pro wrestling.
But, you hear stories, oh, man, he's a great coach, he's a bad interview. Like, how difficult is it to learn to be a good interview? Like you talk about, did you do some research to get ready to know who Hunter was and had previous interviews? Did you learn from the process? I mean, what is that like?
Yeah, I mean, I'd been fortunate over the years, right, for a lot of the jobs to interview for. I go back to even interviewing for a grad assistant job with George O'Leary, and he had me on the whiteboard and for 10 hours straight. I was like, holy cow, just getting whipped, but I loved it. All part of it. But then, when you interview for these head coaching jobs or, whether it's position jobs, and I've got some stories on some of those for another time off camera. But I think more than anything, like, I love the job I had at Memphis, and I was very grateful for that. And so my job was to focus on that. But yeah, you look at the history of a place, you have an understanding, but more than anything, okay, hey, what is this administration about? What is this university about? What ultimately they want the football program to look like? We know that there's been some recent hiccups with the success at the University of Arkansas within the football program. So what has led to them? And then what are some of those things, the challenges that we're going to face when we come and take this thing over? And so that's good for me to know, because it kind of also helps prepare it. Hey, one, is this something that we want? Two, when we get there, hit the ground running, what are the things we need to attack and focus on? So, sometimes when you sit down to actually interview, you're not practicing. I'm not doing the how now, brown cow in the mirror, or those fun things, but just go and be yourself. I think that's the biggest thing.
Did you know, I mean, we talked earlier about the 6 coaches that are at new schools in the SEC. You guys will all kind of be tied at the hip for a while going forward, but the way the job shook out was not how it looked for a long time. When you finished the interview process, did you think you did well? Did you think it was a possibility? I know you were rumored to be the coach at one point and then not. I mean, that was a wild time, it seemed like.
Yeah, listen, I think you're too busy in the moment focusing on your current season to even worry about that stuff. I said this a long time ago. I was very grateful for the job I had at Memphis, and I think that opportunity was there. And if something happened at another place that I thought was the best fit for me as well, I think it's got to be mutual, right? It's like a marriage. It can't just be good for one side. Hey, I really want them, but they don't want me, or hey, they really want me, but I don't want them. It's got to be the right fit, and I felt like this one was the right fit. Even though other schools came calling, as other schools showed up in my house and had discussions about making me the next head coach, Arkansas was where we had our sights set on. It truly was. And so regardless of what happened, just put your head down and figure it out. And if the call comes, great.
You get that call, and now knowing and seeing their daughters and Katie, like, what was that conversation like about, are we doing this?
Somebody from Memphis, I mean, she's got deep roots there, right? I imagine with young kids, she's got family there, and like the idea of leaving's got to be uncomfortable.
Yeah, well, I think we had the conversation, and when there was other schools that came calling, or even sitting in our living room, I'd go back, before I closed my eyes for a brief night's sleep. And she kept saying, what about Arkansas? That's the one. Which is unique, because very rarely, she wasn't concerned about the turnover ratio or any of those things, just other than, hey, what's a place to raise our daughters and where can we be? And, having an understanding of perspective of what actually fits me and the type of coach and person I am, and then what would be best for our family. And get the call, go home and tell her. And she probably hates I should have started with you, but you know what she immediately said? She said, that's great and all. I'm going to put your ego check. Go change a diaper. And so that did.
Wait a minute. So you literally, you get offered the job, and within a couple of minutes of telling Katie you're out there changing a diaper?
Hey, listen, that's part of it. No different than, clean up the dog mess out there. That's just all part of it. I think the more you can do, the better off we all are.
I'm glad you mentioned the dogs. You got 2 pit bull mixes. I think there's a lot of people that think that, oh, these pit bulls, man, they're dangerous or whatever. But like, you got them from an adoption, at somewhere in Memphis. Like, why the pit bull mix, and how's that been a part of your family?
Yeah, listen, pit bulls are loyal. They're sweet as can be, and I get they get a bad rep, but I think it's just like I always say this, like, people with bad kids are probably raised wrong. No, it's different. And so we raise these dogs right, and they've been as sweet as can be. It's fun watching the girls play around with them, and it'll be a year from now, and they'll be, I'm sure, riding on the backs of them. But the dogs have been absolutely tremendous. That turf yard that you see me and the girls playing in, the dogs use it just as much, and they kind of run around the hog too, and it's been great. So yeah, I think, listen, finding sheltered dogs obviously in Memphis was great, and they're a huge part of our family as well.
Do you identify with that in a way? I mean, I think about maybe somebody that wasn't wanted as a home initially, the path that these dogs
you're
had
going
to
like
take.
way deep.
Yeah, we're
now.
going deep here, right? Is that some sort of parallel?
Yeah, I think that's a unique way to look at it. Listen, I think about this, like, maybe not everybody wants a pit. Maybe they've got you didn't know who I was until you had the opportunity. Maybe when you walk out of here, you're like, I actually like that guy. We'll see.
Yeah.
I'll get
I can tell you, I already do.
So, but I do, and I think there's a sense of loyalty, and that's kind of one of those things I've been about too. Like you said, why'd you stay at Memphis? Why'd you stay with the Vikings for as long as you did? Why are you now choosing to call this place home and saying this is where you're going to be? And I think you kind of look at it, and I've never thought about that way with the dogs, but I do think something about it. Before I had the kids, the dogs would go on the road recruiting with me because I didn't want to be away from them.
That's cool.
Wait, you would take the dogs on recruiting trips?
I probably shouldn't say that right now. I'm gonna get audited back from Memphis, but yeah, back in the day, I had the old 4Runner where the window would go down.
Oh yeah.
Throw them in the back, and I'd make sure it was air conditioned. I promise you, my dogs live a better life, all right, than most people. So they're doing just fine. But I think it's a unique thing, right? It's the opportunity to spend time, and I love dogs and I love people.
I think as athletes, music always kind of, there's some sort of, I don't know if it's a Pavlovian thing. You listen to I listen to the same songs in the same order, growing up.
You have a game playlist?
What is do you have
So now, back in the day, it was some Rage Against the Machine, and let's go. And I don't know if the head coach of Arkansas should be listening to that before I don't need to headbutt somebody. You guys are trying to do a pregame deal. I got blood coming down. You'd be like, this dude's really into this 80s wrestling. He's really playing the part. But whatever the players listen to, right? Like, and they would always laugh because in Memphis, I'd like, oh, that's Pooh Shiesty. They're like, well, how do you know that? I'm like, because that's all we play, guys. Like, so I know, I try to be, some of the stuff that they play, I don't necessarily know, but.
So you let them have the music during practice like so many of the other coaches are doing? I could never imagine Coach Spurrier doing that. Would Corky Rogers have allowed you to have music going on during practice back in the day?
Are you kidding me? No. I mean, there's other things that were blaring over my ear that had nothing like music other than maybe Megadeth in your ear, just what's going on? Mm-hmm. But that's all part of it.
All right, Jacksonville. Who's the greatest player from the city of Jacksonville ever?
I'm going to go with, all right, ready? Leroy Butler.
Yeah?
I mean, people
Florida
forget.
State?
A stud.
Packers?
Yeah, I mean, because coached by Corky Rogers, same with Edgar Bennett. Yeah, some of those guys. So I think about those are the ones that you go back, and then some people want to throw all the way back. Was it like D. Brown, pump up?
Oh, yeah.
The slam dunk. Yeah, so I mean, and then you can go way back to some Artis Gilmore back in the day. Or, as soon as can Tony Baselli claim Jacksonville?
I don't think that counts. He's more of a transplant, right?
Yeah, well,
he's a West Coast guy.
So you got to say Fred Taylor.
Fred T, yeah.
Can you count, so I mean, and Mark Brunell, if he's listening to this, will give me a hard time saying, why didn't you throw me in there? But West Coast guy as well. So, you love as watching Jacksonville grow, and of it, that, some of those great players that have come through there, and obviously a lot of good football down there too.
Doing what you do, coaching in the NFL, coaching in the SEC now, you get access. You mentioned a few of these people, Anybody that you've been in awe of, that you've had a chance to meet? Because I think it doesn't matter how much success, there's always somebody that, man, I looked up to that guy. Who's somebody that you've been in awe of in the same room?
Yeah, it's been so neat. Sometimes I actually, you're around enough athletes, right? That you ever hear the story, you don't ever want to meet your heroes, right? And I've been so fortunate, even coaching the NFL, to be around some great people and to meet a lot of people. But to me, where I get excited is actually meeting some of these people that have done so well in other walks of their life. That you get the opportunity, whether it's an author or, the CEO of Walmart or the CEO of Lowe's, the CEO of FedEx, like Fred Smith, rest in peace, like just spending time with him and talking to him about, even his history in the military. To me, like, wow, this dude's a legend. Not only was he successful in life, but what he's able to do with this industry, and no different, right? Developing a relationship with John Tyson and just kind of getting to hear those things. Those are the ones that I sit on the edge of my seat and say, okay, tell me more. The athletes, and there's been some great ones, and I've been fortunate in some of the music stars, and those are great. But man, listen, one day when it's all said and done, right, I just want to be known that I was a good husband, a good father, and that I poured into a lot of kids. But some of those other people, it's been fun to be around.
All right, here's one other one, though. I think there's people always want to know, man, what's it like to be coached by Coach Spurrier? You were coached by Corky Rogers, again, a legend, but you're also now a co-worker with another larger-than-life guy, Coach Cal. How has Coach Cal been in terms of your acclimation to being here and part of the athletic department?
Yeah, he's been wonderful. Obviously, Coach Cal and I have similar roots in Memphis, his time there. And so right when I got this job, a lot of people were sending me pictures of him and them back in the day in Memphis. And you'd always heard the stories and always had so much respect. Like, very rarely do you come into a place and the basketball coach is already in the Hall of Fame, And so literally when I landed, I took the job. Before I even met with our current team, Hunter took me over to basketball to shake Cal's hand, say hello to him, meet the basketball team, and then we had a team meeting set, so it was about 30 minutes later, and he's been great. And I give him so much credit and appreciation, just like a lot of the coaches here have been fantastic. I mean, the golf coaches, the baseball coaches, they all reach out and say, hey, Ryan, whatever we can do for you, we want to help. And Cal's been phenomenal. He lives down the street. I think if you shoot the camera, zoom in enough, maybe you'll see him. Maybe he's out in the pool.
That wasn't him with his shirt off. The guy walking.
It may have been, enjoying some downtime from recruiting. But I think that's what's so unique is we all want to see each other succeed, but they want to know in the importance of football, hear what it can mean for this university, what it can mean for this area as well.
Last thing, you're sitting on this patio midway through the season. We're on air and we're talking about Arkansas football. What do you want us to be talking about?
Yeah, it looks like a different team. I don't want to talk much or harp on the past, but I want you guys sitting there saying, I tell you what, this 2026 Razorbacks, they're completely different. What they've done with this program, the way those players are playing, man, the way they go out there week in and week out, it's a totally different place. And I think that's going to be a great testament to what we're going to do, the process we're doing, how we're building this program the right way with a bunch of guys that care, love football. And I want it to be emulated when you guys, whether you're seeing a game live or you're seeing it on TV, I want you guys to say, man, that's a totally different team. They pray really hard, they care about each other, and they're heading in the right direction.
I want to expound on that, though. You made a comment that I read in the media that Arkansas only has one Power 4 win at home in the last 3 years. Is that true?
That is.
That's not what Arkansas fans have come to expect, not what we come to expect. I mean, how have you seen the commitment from Hunter Yurachek down to everybody in the athletic department to give you the resources to do what you think you need to do to get back on track?
Yeah, and it was one of those things that I didn't, the first couple months here, you're just trying to get this thing going again and get this put back together. And you look up and then someone shares that nugget with you. Hey, one Power 4 win, not just one SEC, one Power 4 win at home in 3 years. And every fan's like, oh, I remember that one. I'm like, we don't want that.
Yeah.
We want it to be like all the ones we remember and the success. And so you sit there and say, okay, what has caused this, right? And what's the root of this that's going on? Because it's easy to sit there and say, okay, where can I be better? Absolutely. But how do we get the alignment right? How do we get everybody on the same page and to get this? And to the school's credit, they've stepped up and trying to make the resources better. They say, hey, what can we do? And just like every football coach, we got to continue to do more. And it's my job, ultimately our job as a staff, to win football games. But we need everything. I need the academics to be on the same page, right? Compliance to be on the same page. Game day operations, right? Our donors, our board of trustees, all to say, okay, hey, this is what Arkansas football needs to look like. Because what's occurred here the last 3 years, with the one home win, that's a correlation of a bunch of things going wrong. And let's all get on the same page and let's get this thing. So to the credit of a lot of people, it's like I've said this, and I don't have all the answers, it's an education piece. Hey, here's how we need to eat. Here's how we need to train. Here's what the, what the academic schedule needs to look like. And our guys are going to go to class and they're going to handle the business and the accountability. And I think getting everybody on the same page has been huge. And we're continuing. It's a day in, day out. And listen, it's going to lead for better opportunities.
It's fun to see. It's fun to be a part of this and this new beginning, and I cannot wait to eat some of those cookies.
I'm starving.
So I appreciate it.
Thanks, Coach, man. It means a lot.
Thanks for having us over, all right?
Thanks. Welcome to Fayetteville, guys. Glad y'all are here. Appreciate it.